Well, welcome to another premiere and a sweet premiere on top of it. This is some original German chocolate that I'm going to be sending with this machine to Susan, aka Sunny Jim, out in Pennsylvania. And she lives in a beautiful city, at least by the name, Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, which if someone wants to Google it and share some interesting facts about Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, where Sunny Jim, aka Susan, comes from, I will probably send you something special. But the first thing we're going to do is launch right into a sew-off. And what I would like to sew off on is some genuine elk hide. Now, those of you that follow me closely have seen this before, but just like one of the recent premieres, I'm going to raise the stakes up by 2 to 2 layers of this genuine elk hide. So we're looking at probably around 14 ounces of genuine leather that's chemically processed on top of all the other stuff that makes it a very, very difficult sew-off to do. I'm trying to pick some lint off of this real quick. So let's buzz down with no music playing 2 layers of this genuine elk hide, and we'll see how Sunny Jim's PFAFF 332 does with a task that would send other machines running away. But here Obermeister and I are pretty tough, so I think we're going to get this done without any difficulty at all. Let me just get this into position. I've got to make a couple of quick adjustments on the machine, and then we'll be ready to jump into this fast and furious. All right, so here goes 2 layers of genuine elk hide. Hold your breath. Here we go. Okay, all that drama because of what? Why were we just drama queens, Herr Obermeister? Because this PFAFF 332 just got this done like a hiccup. So easily. So doggone easy. All right, let's take a look at these stitches. Snip, snip. Snip, snip. All right, and let me grab Maddie's little holder that she sent me. Kind of bend this back a little bit. This leather is trying to curl just a little bit. All right, let's take a look at these stitches. I'm going to try to angle it in the right way so we can see them more clearly. So again, we're looking at about 14 ounces of genuine elk hide that we just buzzed through. I know. It made it look so doggone easy. And in the classroom, we're all about authenticity. So let's just turn our books to page 34, which is a chapter on the perfect stitch, and we can look at the stitch in totality and decide what we think of it. But first of all, I better do this to signify that we're actually in class. Where is it? There it is. So we're officially in class now. So let's go ahead and flip this around and look at the lock stitch now. Which, depending on how this leather is deciding to cooperate, might be difficult to see. But we'll zoom in on it and look as closely as we possibly can. Just look at that nap. That nap is just ridiculous. Well, I don't know what you're seeing. Well, what I'm seeing is a lock stitch that is also spot on, even in spite of the thickness and the density of that nap. It's just popping through. It's like, hey, look at me, look at me. So let me turn this a couple different ways so you can see again what kind of sew-off we just completed with absolute ease after Sunny Jim's machine made it through my finalization process. There's another angle of it. And another angle of it, looking on this end over here, gives you a real perspective of what 14 ounces of leather looks like. Over here it's a little bit uneven, so you can't quite see it as clearly, but that is a ridiculous sew-off, even to do on a PFAFF 332. And Sonny Jim's machine, after it went through my finalization process, just got that job done with absolute ease. I mean, almost ridiculous ease. Right here, Obermeister? Yeah. So I'm going to throw that to the back as a definite pass. And I'm going to move this holder to the side that Maddie sent me out of Florida. One person said, and when I introduced Maddie's holders on another premiere, they said it looked like the holders that are part of a board game. What is the board game? Do you all know what that board game is? I honestly don't remember. I think it's some sort of a guessing where you're creating words or something like that. I don't play board games. I grew up playing board games, Monopoly and some of the others, but I haven't played board games in years. So I don't remember what it was called. But at any rate. So before I launch into this next sew-off, let me go around the machine real quick and cover some things for you. Especially if you're new to PFAFF or you've never seen a PFAFF sewing machine in a premiere in your entire life. But if that's the case, you haven't looked at any of the videos on my YouTube channel because I got a ton of them. I've got a ton of videos presenting different PFAFF machines, including the 332. And the first thing that should impress you is that this is a machine that is engineered and made in Germany. That's what that really cool crest in the center signifies. Now the control on the left is to drop feed dogs. You're going to rotate it counterclockwise to the left. It's going to drop the feed dogs and then you're going to rotate it back to make those feed dogs pop back up again. The little button on the right is to turn the light on and off. And I've already replaced the incandescent bulb that was in this machine when it arrived at the workshop from Goodwill out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is where Sonny Jim bought it through an auction. And when she got done buying it, she said to them, "Don't send it to me in Pennsylvania. Send it to Oconto, Wisconsin, to Scott's workshop so he can go through it with a fine-tooth comb, make sure it's good to go before it ever arrives on my doorstep." And what did they say? "Yes, ma'am. We'll take care of that right away." And they did. And so as we move up the machine, the next control we're going to see is this one right here. And this does a couple of things. If you grab that white knob and you rotate it to the left, you're going to be able to sew in reverse. And then you simply move it back to the right, as you can see it right now, when you're wanting to resume sewing forward. The other silver knob thing near the top right here is going to allow you to adjust stitch length. And the stitch length variation on this machine is huge. When you move it all the way down to where you can see that 1, actually you can see a 1 and a kind of a 0 or a hash mark, you're going to be sewing about 30 stitches per inch. And then you can move it all the way down to where I have it right now on 5, which you can't quite see in the camera shot, and you're going to be sewing at about 5 stitches per inch. So between 5 to 30 stitches per inch, that's going to take care of pretty much any project that Sonny Jim needs. That's a huge range. And there's that beautiful badge mark, PFAFF 332. And it is a fabulous machine in every respect. So let me zoom out on here a little bit and we'll look at a couple of things all at the same time. And I'm not trying to overwhelm you, but it's a way to kind of point out what the controls are and their significance from the get-go, so you can appreciate what we're going to be going through into different phases and facets of doing sew-offs with this machine. So the first thing I'll point out, and this is in relation to how it's laid out on the stitch card. And yes, there's actually a stitch card for this machine, and it also covers the models 230 and 338. So this is how the stitch card looks. I'll kind of sit down on my little stool. And on one side, the side we're looking at right now, it's going to cover stitches and the settings for single needle sewing. If we turn it around, it's going to have settings for dual needle sewing. And again, this covers the models 230, which is 530, the 332, which is 232, blah, blah. And then finally the 338, which is 338. Again, when you're saying numbers in German that have up to a hundredths position, you're going to switch those last two digits that are in the tenth and the one position. So instead of saying, for this model, for example, for Sunny Jim's, instead of saying 223, we say 232. So we have to switch those last two numbers. Does that make sense? You're not going to be tested on this. You might be tested. You might get a pop quiz on this. So you better be paying attention. So anyway, this is the stitch card that we're kind of be referring to. And it's got a little diagram in the middle as well that kind of shows you the points that I'm going to point out on Sunny Jim's machine right now. So there's basically technically five different control centers as you're doing different stitch patterns with this machine. On the very top, hidden underneath this cover, you've got Control A, which is right in this area right here. Control A. We move across the machine and we have Control B. Drop down to here to this little silver control, and this is Control C. We move right to the center, and this is Control D. And then finally, last but not least, we move to the very top of the machine, and this is Control E. So again, Control A as in apple, Control B as in Bob, Control C as in Charlie, Control D as in David, and last but not least, Control E on the very top as in Edward. Now, what do all these things do? Well, that's a great question. You guys are you ask the best questions. How do you come up with these? It's amazing. So what do all these controls do? Well, first of all, controls A and B work in concert between themselves to actuate the cam stack inside of this machine, which is huge because you're able to generate all of these stitches. These work in concert depending on where you set them to actuate the appropriate cam stitch output. And we finally drop down the cams to Control C, blah, 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 Control C, which is going to let us have control over needle position. Control D is our centerpiece, and that's going to give us control over stitch width. Finally, Control E on top was last in the way I read them because it's E, obviously, but it's also one of the most essential ones because it's going to turn on or actuate the actual cam function of the machine. So if you go through this machine painstakingly and you look at your little stitch card and you go, okay, based on the stitch card, I set Control A, I set Control B, I set Control C, I set Control D. I lost my track there for a second. I'm sorry. Let me start over. I set Control A, Control B, Control C, Control D, and now I'm going to do one of the stitch patterns that I selected to set those different points in those controls. But if you don't do anything with Control E up here, you're going to generate a zigzag. That's it. Because this turns on that cam function. So between 0, it actually doesn't go in exact numerical sequence. It goes from 0 to 1 to 3. What is it? 0 to 1 to 3 to 5. And then finally a 1 all the way on the end. What did I just knock over? I just knocked something over. I think I knocked Herr Obermeister over. Oh my goodness. All right, emergency rescue mission. Hold on a second. Herr Obermeister, where are you? Herr Obermeister. Was ist los? Where are you, Herr Obermeister? Herr Obermeister, was ist los? Speak to me, Herr Obermeister. Oh my gosh, he's MIA. He's totally MIA. All right, I'm gonna trust that Dr. Singer and Mr. Bean are gonna go find him because I just knocked the poor guy off. Goodness gravy. Herr Obermeister, Was ist los? Where are you? Oh, I see you now. Woo! All right, Mr. Bean, Dr. Singer, call off the rescue mission. I found him. Thank goodness. That was scary. What did you do? Were you drinking or something? I won't ask. I won't ask. So at any rate, the point is, whatever the point was after that catastrophic event, I've totally lost my focus now. Goodness gravy. So you set all of these things, but you have to turn on the cam function by actuating this. I think I was counting the numbers or something like that. And the numbers on top are in broken sequence. It basically goes 0, 7, 5, 3, 1, 0, 7, 5, 3, 1. Whatever I said before when I knocked Herr Obermeister off the workbench, I may have stated it incorrectly. But again, it's 0, 7, 5, 3, 1. What I discovered is, and let me explain a little bit about what this does. It turns on the cam function, but then it also manipulates the stretch factor of that cam stitch output. And what I found is you get a more accurate stitch representation when you set on the lower settings. So you're on 0 when you're doing non-cam generated sewing, so you don't have the cam function actuated. And then you've got a choice of 7, 5, 3, 1. I found you get a better output on either 1 or 3. So that's what I'm going to do during the premiere. It's up to, obviously up to Susan, aka Sunny Jim, what she does once she gets the machine out in Pennsylvania. But that's what I'm going to do during this premiere. So after that rescue mission with Herr Obermeister, I'll just go over the controls one more time because I'm going to be messing with these controls a little bit during this premiere when we get into the cam generated stitches. So again, we have control A, B, C, D, and last but not least, E on top. See that? Now that I know Herr Obermeister's okay, I've got complete focus, but man, it was dark and dreary there for a second, buddy. Yeah, that was scary. That was scary. Okay, let's move forward. What we're going to sew now is some of this protected full grain leather. I've got 2 layers of it, and I'm going to buzz around this and lay down a modified zigzag stitch. That's my plan anyway. So I'm going to put on a little bit more polka music to calm Herr Obermeister and myself after I knocked him off of the workbench. And I think we'll put on Old Berlin now, Old Berlin. And I'll turn the volume down, obviously, because otherwise it's going to blast us. Here we go. Let me check the volume. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, so we're going to do a modified zigzag down and around on this protected full grain leather. And Herr Obermeister, I'm going to move you to the back so I don't accidentally bump you off the workbench again. That had to be a little bit terrifying. Okay, so let me check my shot. Oh, I have the same shot, which is perfect. All right, so I'm going to move our stitch width, which is what control again? Come on, folks. This is on the quiz. All right, open book. Open book. So if you said Control D, you are correct. So we're going to move Control D from 0 over to 4. And I'm also going to shorten my stitch length from 5 down to about 3.5. Actually, you know what? I'm going to shorten my width a little bit as well to right around, what should we go with? Why don't we go with 3? We'll go with 3. And we will buzz down and around with this protected full grain leather. All right, here we go. I didn't go too far. I don't think I went too far. There we go. All right, to the finish line. Should I close the box? What do you think? Should I do it? Should I close the box? Come on, I can't hear you guys. All right, I'll close the box. I'll try to close the box anyway. Here we go. Ooh, that was right at the end of the song. I don't know if you could hear that or not. That was not even planned. That was not even planned, and that worked out pretty good. Okay, so 2 layers of protected full grain leather. Let's see how Sunny Jim's 332 did on this task. And we'll grab Maddie's little sew-off holder that she sent me. She actually sent me 4 of them. And we'll take a look at these stitches. This is our top stitch. That's some sort of a funky thing where I cut the threads down here, so just ignore that. Just ignore that funny little thing down there. So let's go around here and look at the stitches that this 332 just did. And I never changed the camera angle, so you didn't even see that, did you? Well, that wasn't too cool. Well, you're seeing them now. I can keep it a little bit more steady if I don't talk when I'm moving the camera. So let's take a look at the totality of the stitching. That's our top stitch right there. Again, through 2 layers of protected full grain leather, probably about 6 ounces of leather. So not as thick as the elk hide, not as thick, not quite as thick as, that's actually the only thing we sewed off. I'm still traumatized by knocking Herr Obermeister off the workbench. We've only done one other sew off, duh. So the elk hide, it's definitely not as thick as the elk hide. Now let's take a look at this lock stitch on these 2 layers of protected full grain leather. Well, I don't know what you're seeing, but I'm seeing, apart from my turns are somewhat questionable, but the quality of the stitch, the presentation of the stitch, the glory of the stitch, as I sometimes refer to it, is just absolutely spot on. So I'm going to call this, these 2 layers of protected full grain leather a definite success. And if I didn't show you, I don't remember if I showed you the thickness factor of this or not. See if I can get an edge where you can see it a little bit more clearly. Yeah, here it's not too bad. So that's what we just sewed through right there. Close to 6 ounces of protected full grain leather. And protected full grain leather, if you don't know already, is one of the tougher leathers to get through because of the way it's processed. And Sunny Jim's 332 got the job done just like a hiccup. No difficulty whatsoever. Just a phenomenal job. So I'm going to pick a little bit more polka music that we can play in the background, and we'll keep on moving forward here. Actually, I'm going to pick the next one, but I'm not going to play it yet because I'm going to do a quick little diversion here. Just a quick little diversion. You may have seen recently a premiere I did, an unboxing, and it turned out to be a Swedish beauty, a CI21A. Some people say CL21A, but I'm going to stick with CI21A because the second letter is not capitalized like most of the time you'll see from the Swedish. So I'm arguing that it's an I versus an L, but all together, whether it's CI or CL, it's a class 21A that I unboxed. And this is the machine right over here. Okay, and you're saying, well, what's the significance of that? We can see you're working on the machine right now. What's the significance of that? Maybe you didn't see the unboxing. Maybe you didn't see what happened at the unboxing. And that's why you should attend all premieres, all classes, so that you don't miss something. And then you have to go to your classmate and go, hey, can I copy your notes? And they're like, oh, heck no. No, you can't. You should have come to the class. So, but what you would have seen in that class where I unboxed this machine is I went through the normal phases of unboxing it. We did some initial testing of it. We even did a motor test on the machine, and initially, even though it didn't seem to exhibit the proper level of power, it fired up and it ran. But then all of a sudden, it came to a halting stop. And even when I tried flipping out foot controllers, because I thought, okay, maybe the foot controller just failed. I mean, it can happen. It can go out just like a blink sometimes with those capacitors or the resistors that are engineered into this foot controller. it's a fairly complex foot controller, and that's why I always emphasize when you're shipping a machine, you need to provide as much care and protection to that foot controller as you do to the machine itself, because those are delicate, fragile pieces when they're in transit. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, okay, it's not firing up. And I tried a couple times to hand turn the balance wheel to activate the machine as I was pushing the foot controller, kind of like the old-fashioned push start on the cars that were standard transmissions back in the day. And if you couldn't start it, you sometimes get the car rolling and then you would pop it into gear and then all of a sudden the car would start up. I thought, okay, I'm going to try that method. And it worked a couple of times, and then again it just went silent. It just went dead. And so as I said in that premiere, I obviously have some work ahead of me, and based on my experience of more than 20 years working on vintage machines, I am suspecting one of two things. It's either going to be the motor or it's going to be something to do with the wiring. Maybe we have a short in it. And so right after that premiere where I did the unboxing, I spent about 6 hours working on checking all of the wiring, tearing the motor down, inspecting the motor, servicing the motor. And what I discovered is that the previous owner, or the person that the previous owner, Alejandro from Oregon, the state of Oregon, someone decided that they were going to lubricate that motor with something that almost looked like molasses. You'll see it in the Facebook shots. And I won't share it now, but I'll share it when I do the premiere of this machine, which will be soon. Because I've done the finalization on the electrical wiring. I've done the finalization on the motor, which was a mess. And now I'm focused, as you can see by the parts off, I'm focused down in the raceway area and on the free arm components as well. A lot of stuff to do down there, a lot of stuff. But even having just only serviced the motor and the electrical up to this point, the difference that has come back to this Swedish beauty as far as its potential, as far as its vigor. If any of you saw that premiere of how it was running, even when it was running during the unboxing, which was pretty doggone sluggish, you're going to look at it now and go, good gravy. That is a machine with attitude. Let me show you what I mean. First of all, I'll put a little bit of light on the situation. And with these CL or CI21As, you're hot to sew all the time, whether or not your switch is on for the light. So whether the light is on or off, you're still going to have power to put that machine into motion. You don't need to have the switch on. If anyone's told you otherwise, they're not correct. Because right now the light is off, and if I fire up the motor, this is, I'll demonstrate kind of what we were getting during the premiere before it completely died. Somewhere right around there. This is what happens after I apply my process to the motor and verify electrical to the potential of a machine. Any questions? I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so much fun, isn't it? Isn't it fun taking something that other people, if this had not been shipped to me, let's say it had been shipped to a customer by this Alejandro out in Oregon, and they initially plug it in, it fires up, and then all of a sudden it dies. What do you think would have happened if they had taken it into a service center in their local area? In all likelihood, and I'm just spitballing here, but in all likelihood, that service person would have done some sort of checks on it and said, your motor is shot. You're going to need to replace the motor, or just junk the machine and buy one of my machines here in the service center, which probably would have been one of the newer Husqvarna Vikings. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but they're not made the same as these green machines. They're just not. They're not. So that's probably what would have happened to that person had Alejandro sold it to a customer that didn't have my knowledge on what to do to try to intervene and save the machine. And that is the original motor. Matter of fact, let me do something even better than that. Let me rotate this around, and any of you can go back and watch that unboxing and look at the serial number. And I know you guys trust me. I'm not going to pull the wool over your eyes. I want to be an honest broker in our classroom. But let me actually zoom in for those folks that might be attending this that are skeptics, and let them watch both premieres. And I'm going to have to move that take-up arm a little bit so you can see the serial number unobstructed. So this again is where you find the serial number, right where that take-up arm was blocking it. So it's M2139376. So go back to that unboxing video that was recently released, very recently released, that premiere, and verify that this serial number on this Swedish Beauty is exactly the same one as it came out of the box. I can tell you it is, but you can do your own due diligence and verify that it is. And that way you can just have the confidence of, holy cow, that guy's process, that little guy from Wisconsin, he's got a real cool process. It really does the job. So the other thing I wanted to demonstrate at that unboxing, and I was unable to because the motor was so traumatized and so sick. It really is a miracle. Quite honestly, when I went into that motor and I did all of my tear down of it, and I did all of my cleaning and just pulled out the scalpel and just did major surgery on that motor. When I saw what that motor had been put through, it was literally a miracle that that Swedish Beauty even turned over for the brief period of time it did during that unboxing. And that just goes to evidence. I mean, you can look on the screen right now at a machine that, from an appearance standpoint, looks absolutely pristine. I've done little or nothing to this machine from the unboxing other than the electrical and the wiring work that I did on the machine that took about 6 hours or so. It's just a gorgeous, pretty machine. I mean, all Swedish Beauties are. But this one is really drop dead gorgeous. And so when you look at something like this from the outside and you go, wow, that machine's got to just be incredible from a sewing standpoint. And then you run it for probably less than a couple minutes and it just dies. It goes to show you again that you can't buy with your eyes. And even in my process, where I spend a significant amount of time with any potential seller, and I vet them with probably 80 plus questions and ask them all kinds of detailed questions about the machine, sometimes to their irritation, but that's my process and I'm going to stick with it. And I ask them sometimes to demonstrate the machine sewing, and I just do a variety of different things like that so I can buy with confidence and I know that that machine is going to perform. I did all those things and still discovered, once the machine was in the workshop and started to, be tested under my parameters, that there was a major issue with that motor that had to be addressed. And again, thank goodness Alejandro didn't sell it to a customer, because then the customer would have been up a creek with no paddle. They would have gone to a service center. The service center wouldn't have known what to do, and they would have said junk the machine or buy a new motor or something like that. None of that would have been necessary when you have the knowledge of what to do. But my point is this. Anything's possible when you're dealing with a sewing machine and you haven't had the luxury of having it right on the workbench and being able to tear it down. I also wanted to show you the slow gear as well. So I'm going to pull that slow gear out now, which I also serviced as well, because it was really, really goofed up and gummed up. And also, like the slow gear on John Smith's machine, it had been taken apart and reassembled incorrectly as well. What is with that? If you take it apart, put it back together the same way, right? So I'm going to zoom down on the needle and just real quick show you the impact of what that slow gear is, which is what I wanted to do during the unboxing, but I couldn't. So the slow gear is activated now, and watch the impact that it has as it takes that motor, 1.5 amp motor of real power now, after it's been put under the surgical scrutiny of me in the workshop and cleaned and all the things that have to be done to it, as you'll see in some of the pictures on Facebook. And now we have an actual slow gear that does what it's supposed to do. Here you go. So look at the speed of the needle. The speed of the needle right now, I've got the pedal all the way down. And you can see the impact of that slow gear as it reduces the gear ratio, much like a 10-speed bike. And it takes that machine from full power, which you saw at the outset of this, all the way down to 1/5, so that you have maximum control. And that again is another myth that I need to dispel during this premiere breakaway from Sonny Jim's machine. The slow gear is not so you can go through heavier materials. It is so you can go through heavier materials with more control, but it doesn't increase the power. No matter what people tell you, it does not change the fact that you're dealing with an all Swedish 1.5 amp motor. All it does is reduce the gear ratio, much like a 10-speed bike, so that when you're going through heavy grade material, you have more control over laying down those stitches. That's the whole point of the slow gear, not to give you more power. You'll see that all over the internet, and every time I do, I get really irritated because I know it's a fallacy. It's simply a fallacy. So now I'm gonna take that slow gear out, and when I re-engage the foot controller, I want you to listen for a click, and then you'll see this thing fire up to full power again. All right, are you ready? Full power, slow gear. And I've got the pedal all the way down. Full power. So you can see the benefits readily. Number one, of a motor that is ready to serve that customer that gets this machine for the rest of their lives, and probably their kids' lives and their kids' kids' lives and all that, because it's basically like a brand new motor after I've gone through it now. But also a slow gear that is working correctly as well. So if you decide to be your own technician and disassemble your machine, as I said to one person recently through a messenger request they sent, they were saying, I'm looking at having somebody repaint a featherweight, but I have to disassemble it so that they can do that. How do I go about doing that? Can I consult with you over the phone? Can you guide me? I said, why don't you just videotape disassembling the machine and then watch it in reverse when you're putting it back together? I think her remark was something like, that is absolutely brilliant. I never thought about using technology with a vintage sewing machine. Why not? Why not? So that you don't get into a predicament where all of a sudden you do something with good intentions and all of a sudden you've got a machine that won't work anymore. You don't want that to happen, right? You don't want that to happen. Okay, I totally lost track of where we were with Sonny Jim's machine now. So let's get back on track with Sonny Jim's, aka Susan's machine, on some additional sew-offs. And I think what I'm going to sew off on now is going to be some leather suede. Leather suede always makes me a little bit uneasy because it's a lot more difficult to sew than regular leather because of the way that it's processed. It tends to mess around with stitches. It tends to do a lot of things that you would typically find sewing on vinyl, but it does it sewing on leather suede. So we'll see how Sonny Jim's machine does against a sew-off like this. And right now I'm going to put on Big Top. If I didn't mention it, the one just before this was Old Berlin. I think I mentioned it. And then before that, at the intro to this premiere, it was Smoked Kielbasa Polka. All right, let's get back to work. Or play. If some of you haven't seen this already, I just introduced this. I'm going to go away from the workbench just for a second. This is my new official sign in the workshop as to the intent or the culture of the workshop. The culture of the workshop is we learn here, but we have fun. We have fun. So if you're against, opposed, or find fun objectionable, you're in the wrong place. I'm sorry, you are. Because we're going to learn and have fun at the same time. Isn't that okay? I think that's okay. All right, let's lock this camera in place and see how Sonny Jim's 332, 332 does against this leather suede, and we're going to be going around in a circle with this puppy, so we'll see. And I think I'll flip us back to a straight stitch and go around the outer perimeters of this, or I should say attempt to go around the outer perimeters of this. I don't always stay on course, many of you know that. So all right, so I'm changing our stitch width back to 0 from, where were we, around 3.5, I think, 2.5. And that again is Control what? Control D. So we're back to 0 on that, and then I'm going to move our stitch length all the way back to 5. And we're going to buzz around this, and I'll try to stay on course as best as I can. No guarantees, don't bet the farm on it, folks, you know what I mean. All right, so let's go around and we'll see how Sonny Jim's machine does with this tricky leather suede stuff. Here we go. I'm taking it really slow. And this 332 does not have the benefit of a slow gear, so I am the slow gear. Now I'm on a straightaway, kind of like in the Indy 500. I got to speed it up a little bit. All right, I don't think I closed the box, or the circle in this case, but I came pretty doggone close. All right, so let's take a look at these stitches, and I think I'm going to have to cheat and use some painter's tape because Maddie's stitch off holder is not going to work in this case. This is just too flimsy and too large to fit that that stitch off holder thingy, what-do-you-call-it. All right, so I've got some painter's tape in place already. If I can get it off of the workbench. Oh goodness, there we got her. Okay, and I'm going to put it on this side of the machine right over here. And hopefully it holds it long enough for us to look at these stitches. I hope it does. I think it will. It might. All right. Bring my lights in a little bit, see if that will also help us to see these stitches a little bit better, hopefully. I just have to watch that right light because it tends to block the camera a little bit. Let's come out on this shot and go over there. And it did. So let me adjust that light a little bit. So this is again leather suede. It's probably only about 3 ounces, but don't let that trick you. Leather suede is a very, very tricky material to sew. You can almost see it's like a powdered appearance on the surface, and that kind of tells you what that material does when you're trying to go through it with a needle. But Sonny Jim's 332, well, the stitching speaks for itself. Did not miss a beat. Did not miss a beat at all. Trying to go really slow if I can here. This tripod gets a little bit stiff sometimes and it gets a little jerky, so I'm doing the best I can. So we've been around once already. I'm going to come back to this stop point here right about now. Come out so you can look at the totality of stitching, which I don't know about you, but if that were a leather garment or something like that, or some leather good that you made, either as a gift or maybe you made it as a business in your home, and you just laid down stitches like that, and you're trying to sell that item, my hand's up, you can't see it, I'll buy it. Because those are absolutely drop-dead gorgeous stitches. They just are. So I'm going to flip this around now. We'll look at the lock stitch. I'm going to do my best to tape it in place again. No machine was harmed during the filming of this. because painter's tape, if you're needing to secure something to the machine, it's probably one of the safest adhesive type materials that does not harm, whether it's a matte finish like this or whether it's a pretty shiny finish like you might see on some machines. It's going to be very gentle on that machine. I wouldn't leave it on forever because adhesives change over time depending on the environment. So you don't want to leave it on there forever either. Let's see, I can get even closer. You see if it's clear or closer or distant. I think that's actually clear when I come out just a hair, isn't it? So let's go around. We're looking at the lock stitch now that Sunny Jim's 332 just laid down. Trying to go really slow. But the stitch formation, the presentation is just absolutely gorgeous. Just absolutely spot on. It's weird how you come in and out a little bit. It kind of makes it a little bit more clear. You know, I could come off the tripod, but I think you can pretty much see it right there, right? So I'm going to come out on this shot a little bit. You can look at the totality of stitching again. This is the lock stitch. Again, through about 3 ounces of leather suede. And again, Sunny Jim's 332 just did a phenomenal job. Just did a fabulous job. I'm going to leave that on the front of the workbench just in case I have to tack down anything else. So I'm going to throw this to the back along with our elk hide and our protected full grain leather as a definite pass. And we're going to keep on moving forward. I've got a couple more sew-offs that we're going to do with this 332 to include. As a matter of fact, let me put on some more music because I just realized I have to cut some cotton blend material for some of our decorative sew-offs because I want to show you some of those as well. So what did we just do? We did Big Top, I think. Yeah, because we did Big Top, we did Oberlin, we did Smoked Kielbasa Polka, and now we're going to do Camillo, almost sounds Japanese, Polka. So let's try that one while I search for the material I need to cut. Should have thought of that before, but I didn't. You have real good hearing, you probably can hear me cutting it. You know the compliment I get all the time. I get lots of compliments and you all are so kind and you're so gracious and you're accurate because I really do work hard at what I do. But the compliment I get all the time is, Scott, if you make a mistake, and John Smith said this as well, if you make a mistake, Scott, you don't try to cover it up. You don't gloss over it. You don't edit things out and try to, you know, pretend like everything always turns out perfect, because it just doesn't. And apparently y'all find that very refreshing. So I'm glad, because that's just the way I roll. I just roll that way. All right, let's move this shot. All right, so now we're going to do, you know what, it might be helpful if I just came in on this shot and now I'm potentially going to come out on this shot, but that's okay. Let's stick with this before I do the decorative type sewing with this machine, because I do want to show you the settings, even though I've gone over the controls very quick, and you can read a stitch card just as well as I can. Let's go ahead and do heavy grade denim first, and then we will move towards doing some decorative sewing with this PFAFF 332. So here we've got 2 layers. Yeah, here we've got 2 layers of heavy grade denim, and this is thick stuff. This is the kind of stuff that farmers wear, because it's going to stand up to a hard day's work. So we're going to start with 2 layers, and we're going to fold it in half, get us up to 4 layers, and then we're going to fold it one more time and get us all the way up to 6 layers. That's what 6 layers of denim looks like. I know. Pretty terrifying, isn't it? So let's get this underneath the presser foot. And yes, there's plenty of clearance to get 6 layers of denim underneath this presser foot. The 332 has fairly good presser foot clearance. And on top of that, it's got just a real modest hyperextension, probably about 1 or 2 millimeters. But 1 or 2 millimeters can make a difference. So I'm thankful. I'm very thankful for it. And I know it will probably end up serving Sunny Jim at some point as well, if she has to get some thicker materials underneath there. And certainly your cheaters method, and I mentioned this in many premieres, is in the absence of a quick release where you can let all of the presser foot pressure off, like a lot of the Viking Husqvarnas have, and some of the Japanese machines have it as well, and certainly other makers as well. I'm not trying to say it's just exclusive to those, but you can also temporarily drop your feed dogs, which will give you about probably up to 3 millimeters of extra clearance, so you can tuck material like this in underneath the presser foot, re-engage that feed dog control, and then resume sewing without missing too much of a beat. So just keep that in mind if you're ever in a sticky situation where you just need a little bit more space. As long as your machine can drop the feed dogs, you can get about 3 more millimeters out of that machine without too much effort. So let's see, what am I sewing now? I meant as far as the controls, I'm looking at the controls. So I'm set up for a straight stitch, that's fine. Let's just do a straight stitch on this, because we've got a lot more sewing to do after this. Move my stool back a little bit. So 6 layers of heavy grade denim. I had to be quiet right at the end of that song. All right, here we go. Just didn't do too good of a job in keeping that flat. I kind of let it slide away a little bit so our layers are not completely lined up anymore, but we still have 6 layers there. It's just not it's not as pretty as it was. It kind of slipped out away. All right, here we go to the finish line. And I am not going to close the box. So any of you folks that get all frantic about the box is not closed, get a paper bag and do some deep breathing. That's what I would suggest. All right, let's give these a clip, get those back into position. And I didn't mention it, the thread that I'm using is from Joann Fabrics. It's some of that quilting thread that you've seen me use before. And I got to give credit where credit is due. Let me see if I can read the title. So this is the Americana quilting thread, and the little thing just came off the top of there. But this is the stuff that I'm using. It's available at Joann Fabrics. And from a standpoint of quality of thread, and also from a standpoint of stitch quality in how it works in concert with whatever needle you're using, is really fabulous. Plus, their pricing is hard to beat. When you go in there, they oftentimes will have deals on this Americana quilting thread. They'll have deals on this Americana quilting thread all the way down to 50 cents a spool. How do you beat that? Even when you walk into Walmart, you end up paying probably around $2 to $3 per spool. I think their cheapest stuff that's designed for machines at Walmart is right around $2.25, somewhere in that realm. So Joann Fabrics is a great place to buy a lot of things, including what I would consider to be high quality thread that does a fabulous job, and you don't have to hurt your pocketbook getting it, which I think is even, I don't know, I tend to be a thrifty buyer, so that's just a sweet spot for me. Plus I can go in there and just see those great folks and give them more of my Sewaholic posters, and it's a lot of fun. So let me zoom in on these. Again, we're doing 6 layers of heavy grade denim. You be the judge. And again, when you're going through this many layers and you're not using a denim needle, which I'm not, that is a really good outcome. Really good outcome. Very, very pleased. And again, 6 layers of denim, folks. You have some denim within reach, go ahead and fold it to 6 layers if it's a heavier grade denim like this. And then consider the idea of putting it underneath your presser foot. See how your machine does with that. I'll tell you, things at this workshop, after I've gotten done working on these machines, spending as much time as I do on them, I make things look really easy, but I get notes from people and calls literally saying to me, I just watched your YouTube video where you did such and such. How in the heck did you do that? Because I got the same make and model and my machine can't even come close to that. And I usually say to them, I'm usually a little bit of a wiseacre. I'll say, well, has your machine ever been in my workshop? Well, no. I said, that's why I can't do it. Let's look at that lock stitch. Trying to get it to lean just a little bit, but I don't want it to fall off. I've already knocked Herr Obermeister off the workbench. I don't want to knock a sew off the workbench too. All right, let's zoom in on these. This again is our lock stitch. And I'm intentionally trying not to talk or breathe even, because I tend to jerk this camera around a little bit and it makes it harder for you to see, which is certainly not my goal. Well, you get the idea. I mean, right there. I'll just pause there for a second. Beautiful lock stitch as well through 6 layers of heavy grade denim. And Sonny Jim's machine, it just did it like it was a light cotton. I mean, it was like, that was it. So, I mean, so far we've done, I'll just kind of review this with you real quick if I may. So far, you know, I'll actually do it in order. I'll totally impress you that I can do it in order. And then I'll probably forget to lock the camera, so I won't impress you anymore. We'll come out on this a little bit. So far, we launched with 2 layers of genuine elk hide, and Sonny Jim's machine just knocked it out of the park. We'll throw that back to the rear again. We then did 2 layers of protected full grain leather. And again, the machine did just a phenomenal job with this sew off as well. You can always rewind it if you want to watch it again. So that was a slam dunk. We then did this real tricky leather suede stuff. I gotta really back up so you can see this because it's so big. We did this leather suede stuff, and I actually did a fairly good job of following that that border all the way around. And we laid down a straight stitch that presents just beautifully. You already saw it. You can always rewind and watch it again, both the top stitch and the lock stitch. So that was a slam dunk. And then last but not least, we just did this heavy grade denim, 6 layers of it. And Sonny Jim's 332 did just a fabulous job. No issues, no difficulty, no pause, no hesitation. Part of that is I also did a better job of getting my foot on the foot controller than I usually do, so that helps a little bit. But again, just another total success. So nothing we've done so far, and we've given this machine some fairly significant challenges, in my opinion. We've done some pretty broad strokes as far as testing this machine. And you ever get that where you're, you know, I've been doing a lot of things leading up to this premiere, and my mind has just been scattered all over the place. And during the course of this live premiere, I'm trying to remember if I already showed you measuring harp space on the machine. So type in the chat if I didn't, and don't mess with me. Don't mess with me and say you didn't when I actually did, because I'm totally having a mind cramp right now as to whether or not I covered that. I'm looking over at the tape measure, and I'm trying to remember if I did it or not. So what I'm going to do real quick, if I already did it, then we're going to do it twice, and there's no major harm in that. I'll try to be quick about it in case I already did do it, because I didn't get much sleep last night, and my mind is just in so many different directions. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying that I honestly don't remember if we covered that. So I'm going to cover it now anyway. So just forgive me if we already covered it. It'll be reinforcement. If someone joined the premiere late, then they're still going to get that benefit of seeing this very brief explanation. So it comes up all the time as far as how do you measure bed length, what is harp space, etc. Even WK, when I had my first conversation with him, he said, until I started watching your videos, Scott, I never knew what harp space was. I didn't have a clue what harp space was. And he also didn't know that a 201-2 had been used by Rolls-Royce, but when he watched my premiere almost 10 years ago, he was like, holy mackerel, I didn't realize the treasure that I had, because he had a 201-2 at that point. So a quick explanation if we've already covered this. And you have to give me grace if we already did. I'm just reinforcing it in the classroom. When you're learning something in the classroom, sometimes the teacher will repeat it again. Of course, that's part of the lesson plan. It's not because they couldn't remember if they already covered it, but that's my case. So overall bed length, I'm going to measure from the very tip of this extension piece on the far left-hand side all the way to the inside of the pillar, which is 17.5 inches. Okay? That's not really technically part of the harp space. That's part of the bed space. But the harp space is going to be a measurement that will take us from the needle to the inside of the pillar, which on Sonny Jim's machine is going to be a little bit more than 8 inches. I'm trying to get it flat here. It's going to be about 8.25 inches approximately. So let's just round it down to 8 inches. We know it's more, but we'll make it less. So 8 inches from the needle to the inside of the pillar, that's part of the harp space. Then we're going to measure the depth of the harp space all the way from the rear of the bed all the way to the front of the bed, which is going to be 7 inches. And then we're going to measure from the bed up to the bottom of the arm, which will give us the height of the harp space, which is going to be right around 5 inches. So total bed length we already did. But when you're doing the harp space, you're going to measure from needle to pillar. You're going to measure from front to back as far as the depth. You're going to measure from the bottom of the bed up to the bottom of the arm. Okay? So if I already did it, we just did it again. So don't send me any nasty notes about, do you think that we're forgetful? No. Your instructor right now that's teaching this class is forgetful. Because I couldn't remember if we already covered that. And I certainly wanted to, because I think it's beneficial to go over things sometimes more than once. I know one thing for sure that I haven't showed you yet, and I'm going to do it real quick. And I will zoom in on the needle so we're ready to launch into the next sew-off, which will be, what are we going to do? Maybe we can do some U.S. Army grade canvas. We're eventually going to do the decorative stitches. Just hang in there, folks. Hang in there. Okay. So I wanted to show you this real cool bonus that Sonny Jim got with her purchase from Goodwill out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Let's see here. I'm going to put on the Enthusiast polka in the background just as a little bit of background music.
Enthusiast polka by the United States Marine Band.
I love it. Wouldn't you have loved to have met that guy that just made that announcement of the song and that? What a neat voice. Part of it is the old radio sound, but... So what Sonny Jim got that was a huge bonus with this purchase was this original sew-off. And I'm not going to be able to set it on that holder that Maddie gave me. But she got this original sew-off that shows the original stamps at the Fall factory in Kaiserslautern, Germany. And then it shows all of the stitches. Let me come out on this. It shows the original stitch-offs that were done when that machine reached the end of the factory line before it was released from the factory to go to the sales center where somebody ended up buying the machine. Plus they do a buttonhole. They actually sew a button on. And then on the rear of it, they do a special stamp on here showing the class of the machine, the class number, the machine number, and then the control person that actually did the sew off. So that's really cool as well. And if I already covered this too, then you totally know I didn't get enough sleep last night. So I better move forward before I confuse you anymore with repeating things and you're going, didn't he already say that? But better I say it twice than not say it at all. So let's zoom back down to the needle. We'll eventually get to those decorative sew-offs, but I do want to do some U.S. Army grade canvas right now. So let me lock this in place, and I promise to get more sleep tonight. So I'm a little bit more coherent when I do the next premiere. All right, so we've got U.S. Army grade canvas here. We're going to start with 2 layers. I'm going to go ahead and fold it side saddle like this. Get us up to 4 layers. And I'm going to fold it one more time, get us all the way up to 8 layers. And that's kind of what 8 layers of U.S. Army grade canvas looks like from the side right there. Okay? So I'm going to slide that underneath the presser foot, and we're going to go down and around with a straight stitch. Actually, I'm not going to go down and around. We've been running a little bit long already. I'm going to just go straight down the middle. Straight down the middle with 8 layers of this genuine U.S. Army grade canvas. So we're going to be sewing this with the largest stitch, which is on setting 5, which is going to give us about 5 to 6 stitches per inch. I've got the stitch width set at 0, and we should be good to go. Take up arm is up. So here we go with 8 layers of U.S. Army grade canvas. And I won't do this sew off twice. That's the beauty of having stitches on it. Once I get done with it, I'll remember, even being sleep deprived, I'll remember, oh, I already did that. Okay, so here we go. And I almost sewed straight. That was kind of exciting. That was a little bit exciting, yeah. All right, let's give these threads a clip and we'll take a look at these stitches real quick. And I probably could have increased that presser foot pressure just a little bit leading up to this sew off, but I didn't. So you'll notice that the stitches might be a little bit shorter than they would be normally if we were sewing a much lighter grade material. And that's a product of material feed. When the material is much, much heavier and you don't have enough presser foot pressure, you know, for that level of sewing, then you'll see that the stitches get a little bit shorter. They don't change as far as their formation and the integrity of the stitch, but they do change as far as overall length. And that's an easy thing to solve by just increasing presser foot pressure. All right, so let's take a look at these stitches. 8 layers again of U.S. Army grade canvas. Yeah, you can see where the feed is, when there's not enough presser foot pressure, the feed is gives a little bit a slight little bit of unevenness. It also makes the stitches just a little bit more stubby. Stubby stitches, that would make a fun shirt, wouldn't it? So the totality of the stitches, they speak volumes about how well the machine is doing its job. It's doing a better job usually than the operator, who could have increased presser foot pressure, but didn't. And the result is you don't get quite the level of product that we've seen in some of the other sew-offs, even with a heavier leather, because canvas is a tough material to sew, especially if you've got just a little bit less presser foot pressure than you should have. Now there we start real even, looks really good, those first 3 stitches. And then it starts to get a little bit wonky. It gets a little bit wonky because that material without enough presser foot pressure, as I highlighted in that recent premiere, is tending to shift around a little bit. At the beginning and at the end it does a fairly good job, but as it's at the middle it tends to wiggle around a little bit because that pressure isn't enough, and it impacts the formation of the stitch, the length of the stitch just a little bit, and the consistency of the stitch. But that again is an operator issue that can be solved very easily. And since we're all about being real in the classroom, there you go. That is a situation where we got a very good stitch outcome. The machine definitely passed, but it could have been even a more even outcome if we had made a slight adjustment in that presser foot pressure. But again, all of that thrown to the side without shaking any fingers at myself or anyone else, that's what we just sewed through. It's more evident when you look at it like this. That's a lot of material, folks. That's a lot of material. 8 layers of U.S. Army grade canvas. And it's canvas to boot. I know some folks that struggle doing 2 or 3 layers of canvas, and we just did 8 layers. And again, U.S. Army grade canvas is like that blue canvas I sometimes use. It's about as close to commercial grade as you can get. So it is tip-top stuff. So why don't we finally launch into some of those decorative sew-offs that I talked about doing? Long time ago, you might say. So let's get the material in place. And we'll try to move that direction finally. Okay, we're going to have to do a number of things to get ready for this, and that's okay. I'll change this camera shot a little bit to come out a little bit. Yeah, I need to get more sleep tonight. I can tell I've just been off my game a little bit, and that just happens. Actually, I think right here is close enough. Yeah, that'll give us a view of all the controls so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Although I kind of cut off 332, that's almost sacrilegious, isn't it? Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, so let's set up for doing one of the decorative stitches that's built in. Again, no cams have to be added to this machine. There's a huge cam stack underneath the lid, and that generates all of the stitches that you can get off of that stitch card that I showed you. You know, whether you're doing single needle sewing or dual needle sewing, it doesn't matter. It's going to give you that option so that you can enjoy the benefits of all these stitches. That's a lot of stitches, folks. It just is. So why don't we do this one first? And I'm going to try to bring it up to the camera so you can kind of see what we're going to be trying to sew, although it's not going to be red, because I'm using a white thread. It's kind of an off-white thread. But we're going to be sewing this stitch pattern right above the 7-2 CD. Let me see if I can get in real close so you can see it. I think that's really a sweet looking stitch, don't you? Okay, so now what do we do? What do we need to do in order to achieve that? What we need to do is we need to make a number of control adjustments. So the first thing we're going to go after is Control A up here on top, and we need to set it at 7 according to this. Oops, I just moved it. We need to set it on 7, which you can't see me doing, but just trust that I'm going to try to set it on 7. And this control up here, I'll just mention it real quick. You only are supposed to turn it one way. Don't try to turn it the wrong way. It only gets turned clockwise as you're looking down at it like this. And it even has arrows on there, if those arrows haven't worn off, that tell you just turn it clockwise. But if your arrows are gone, take me on my word, only turn it clockwise. So I set that on 7 like the stitch card tells us. And now I'm going to go over to Control B, which is just adjacent to it. Again, these two controls work together, A and B, as far as what it pulls out of that cam stack. And we're going to set Control B on 2. So we're on 0 right now. I'm going to turn this, we're on 1, and now we're on 2. And it doesn't give me a setting to select for C. C again is going to be our needle position. When it doesn't give you a setting like that, I keep bumping it. Come on there, buddy. When it doesn't give you a setting on one of the letters, like this one right now, where it's blank, that just basically means that the machine is going to activate itself, and that needle position is going to be shifting because the controls are going to be shifting. That assembly in the middle where the main controls are, you're actually going to see that moving. Matter of fact, I'll leave the camera shot wide so you can see it moving. It's really cool. So we don't do a thing with C, and D as well. We're not going to do a thing with D. So C and D are are just going to be left the way that they are because that particular cam function is going to be manipulating those things as we're sewing. Does that make sense? Sort of, kind of? Okay. And then the last thing we have to do, remember, we're only going to get a zigzag stitch unless we do what? And I know I mentioned this already. I'm not that tired. We have to activate control up here, which is letter E. It's not even on the stitch card. I mean, as far as the setting option, it just shows it on the diagram. And again, I got a better outcome when I went down into the lower range, so I'm going to move that control E all the way down to, why don't we move it down to about, debating between 1 and 3. There's kind of a middle setting too. I'm going to leave it right around on 2. I think I'll leave it on 2. So now we've moved, we've set A, we set B, C and D we didn't have to do a thing with. And then finally we set control E on top on 2. And now let's sew off that stitch and see what we get. Let's see what we get. And the only other thing that I could manipulate is, and it's off camera I think, yeah, it's a little bit off camera. The only other thing I can manipulate is stitch length. And right now I'm on 5, so I'm going to move that down a lot. And I'm doing it off camera a little bit. I'm going to move down to about, give me a second here. I'm going to move this all the way down to 1 on stitch length. And when I did some of the off-camera ones, I don't remember exactly what I set it on. It was right around 1 or maybe closer to 0.5. We'll try 1 to begin with. So this is our first stitch. And I can actually widen this shot even a little bit more so you can watch that cool control doing its little dance in the middle. Yeah, you can pretty much see that. You can see the needle kind of off to the left there on the bottom. So let's stitch this off and see what we get. Don't you love it when I say that? Such a voice of confidence. Let's see what we get. All right, here we go. Isn't that fun with that? It's almost distracting a little bit when that little control over there is doing its dance. And that is, and I'll zoom in on these once we get done, because I know that this premiere is going a little bit longer, and y'all love being in the classroom, and would probably give up summer vacation just so we can spend time together, but I also want to be fair to you, too. So, and I'm being utterly sarcastic right now, because I know you enjoy the premieres, but at the same time, when they go real long, you're like, oh, geez, this is going a little bit long. But look at all the stuff we covered, and some of it maybe we covered it twice because I couldn't remember if we already covered it. Oh my gosh. Sleep is a lot more important than you think. You know what I mean? It just is. Okay, that looks cool. You look at our pattern. Yeah, that's actually very representative of that pattern. Just deciding if I want to go from 2 back to 1. I'm going to leave them all the same. It is what it is. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. All right, so the next, we'll do another stitch now, because we have a lot of material here, obviously. And I'm not going to fill all this material up, or we're going to be here for Lord knows how long. So we did that one. Wait a second. 7. Yep, 7. I had to double check. So 7-2 setting is the one we just did. Now I want to do another one here. I'm going to go all the way over to this one. This is a real cool looking one. So this is the one I'm going to try to do next. And we only have to set 2 controls on this. Control A and B. Oh, let me turn my screen around. We'll have to set control A and B. And we're going to try to generate that stitch that you can see right above it right there, which I think is super cool, don't you? Okay. So let's see. We're going to have to change control A. We had it on 7. We're going to go down to 1 now. And again, only turn it clockwise, please. So we're on 1. And now we have to move control B to nowhere because it's already on 2 and that's where it needs to be. And then control C and D are going to they're going to float, so we don't have to do anything with those. So let's see what we get with this stitch off, which I think is a really cool stitch off. All right, here we go. Had to give a little bit of gas at the end there, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's a fun one. I think I'm going to shorten this. I think I'm going to shorten the stitch even a little bit more, though, just to define it a little bit more. So I'm going to move our stitch length down even a little bit further, because we're getting some decent stitches, but they're not quite. They don't quite have the clarity that I'd like to see. All right. All right, so we're going to move right into another stitch off. Let me put this underneath the presser foot again. What stitch should we do next? Let me take a look at some of these. Yeah, that was a pretty cool one. Let's do this one right next to it. So this is, we're going to be making only one change to Control A. Let me just double check. Yeah, just to Control A. So we're going to try to do this stitch pattern next. And again, they're going to look a little bit different because they're in color, obviously. Okay, so we're going to change Control A from where it's at right now on 1 to 2. Okay. Control B, we don't have to do a thing with, because it needs to be set on 2. It's already on 2. And C and D are going to float. So let's go ahead and run this next stitch off. And I did shorten the stitch length just a wee bit to try to get a little bit better definition out of that. All right, here we go. And the clicking that the control in the middle is doing is normal. So don't be afraid that something's wrong. It just does that. All right. Yeah, I'm liking that better with that. See, again, I've said this before in other premieres, if you manipulate stitch width or stitch length, you can get a totally different output as far as that stitch pattern. And in this case, we don't have the option to manipulate the stitch width because that's going to be Control D, and Control D and C are being controlled by the cam output through Controls A and B. A and B affects what's needed as far as C and D. If that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. All right, let's do another stitch. Should have cut a smaller piece of material. Now I feel guilty. All right, let's get our material underneath the presser foot. And obviously sewing something this thin, our presser foot pressure is more than enough. Probably a little bit more than we need, but what can we do next? Let's look at some of these others. I all of a sudden caught myself looking to see, am I looking at the right side of the stitch pattern? Again, you've got single needle, you got, yeah, I was looking at the correct side. I'm not that tired. I might be. So now we're going to do this one that's right next to it. And again, with position B, with Control B, we don't have to do a thing. It's already on 2. But we're going to have to move Control A. We have to move Control A from 2 to 3. This is the one that we're going to go after. And if I haven't said it already, you can see that C and D are just going to float. There's nothing we have to do with those. So Control A, I'm going to move from 2 to 3. And Control B, we're just going to leave it the way it is. We don't have to do a thing with C or D. So let's try this next stitch off and see what we think of that. All right, here we go. Notice it's a lot more gentle movement of Control D. It's not doing that clicking and popping very frantically. And you'll see that as you go through the different stitch patterns, some are going to create a lot more reaction from Control D and C. Others are going to be a lot more subtle as you're going through the different stitch patterns that this machine can generate. And if you all of a sudden discover that, you know, again, when Sonny Jim, Susan ordered this or won it through the auction format of Goodwill online out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, she was promised a stitch card, didn't get one, was able to track one down somehow. They're not always easy to find, even though some folks are trying to make them aftermarket now. But if you can't find one, one of the premiere videos on my YouTube channel, on this YouTube channel, is going to be a basically a photo lapse transition through the entire stitch wheel for the PFAFF 332. It's going to take you through every one of these stitches on this stitch card, shot by shot, showing you the settings, showing you the stitch. So that way you can always have that as a fallback plan as well. And I think if you just search it on the channel, something like PFAFF stitch card or PFAFF dial-a-stitch or something like that. I don't remember how I coded it, but you should be able to track it down. Okay. 2, 2. Okay, I'm having another one of my sleepy moments, so give me a second here. 2, 2. All right, let me go outside the scope of those red ones just because I'm having a moment of lapse and I'm trying to remember. Wait a second, should we do that one? Did we do it already? So, oh man, sleep deprivation. So we were set on 3 and 2. Now we're going to go to 4 and 2. We're not making some significant changes really. So we're going to 4 and 2 now. We've done 4 stitches so far. Let's see how this one looks. And I should show you, shouldn't I? That would be helpful. Alright, so we already changed it to 4 and 2. Yep, we did. Alright. Alright, so we're going to do this next stitch off, and we'll see what you think of this. Actually, we'll see what you think of all of them once we get done. Alright, here we go. Oh, that's a fun one. I'm liking that one. And I'm relieved to see that we hadn't sewn it already. It was like I'm really sleep deprived and we'll probably do the same stitch twice, which would not be good. I mean, it wouldn't be bad. All right. Clip the thread and we'll move on to our next decorative stitch. Again, you see what I'm saying. We're only doing a small fraction of the stitches that are built into this machine in that cam stack, and we've already done 5. We've already done 5 of them, and we'll just keep plugging forward. So 4 and 2 is the last one we just did. That was that one. So now we'll just keep marching forward, I guess, with these red ones. Why not? So this next one we're going to do, we're going to have to change the A control to 5. And the B control is going to stay on 2 again. And this is what we're going to be trying to sew. All right, so we'll make that change on the A from 4 to 5. And C and D again are going to be floating. You'll see them moving. I don't know if it's going to be a louder type clicking as it's manipulating. In essence, what it's doing is it's generating this decorative stitch output by manipulating the stitch width very rapidly and very strategically. So we'll do this next one and see what you think. Here we go. actually ended in the up position. How the heck did that happen? How did that happen? Well, this thread has been really good, and now it's starting to do its curlicue thing. That's the only thing about this Americana quilting thread from Joann's, is it tends to get a little bit squirrely as far as trying to curl up sometimes. And again, we're getting into winter, so it could be that the air is quite a bit more dry already, and more static in the air, so that could also be messing with the thread as well. But it, for some reason, seems to be a little bit more pronounced with the Americana quilting thread than the Coates and Clark thread. And that may be because there's a light wax maybe on the Coates and Clark that I'm using, so that would reduce the factor of that static a little bit. All right, let's choose another stitch. Let's see what we're going to choose. 5 and 2. Yeah, we already did 5 and 2. You can tell I'm really tired. I'm sorry about that. So now we're going to try 6 and 2. We'll do 6 and 2 next, which will look something like this. All right, so we're going to change A to 6. And B is going to stay the same. C and D, we don't have to do a thing with that. So let's do this next stitch off. Here we go. And I'm doing a lot better at stopping in the up position. I don't know how that happened. So those are going to be similar. Those are going to be similar in their look, but they are different. So now I'll try to pick, I'll pick just 1 or 2 more stitches, because I know that you probably don't want me to do this entire stitch card, especially if you haven't done a bathroom break already. That would be rough. All right, let me clip these threads, and we will do 1 or 2 more stitch offs. Well, I hope you folks have been doing okay. We're still in the Corona craze, so I know that makes things a little bit more stressful for everybody. All right. I'm going to do something totally, I'm going to go into the blue ones now. I think I'll go into the blue ones. Okay, so I'm going to do one of these blue ones. It's kind of a building block one almost. I'll show it to you. And we're going to have to make a couple of changes to try to generate this one. Okay, so first thing we're going to change is Control A. Right now we're on 6. We're going to go all the way to 1. Control B, we finally get a chance to change that after being stuck there for a real long time. We're going to move it to 3. C, we're not going to touch. And then D, we're going to have to move that, and it's actually almost there already. We're going to move that over to 0, and it's actually on 0, so that was kind of cool. And we'll see what we get this time. It should be close to that building block pattern. Just double checking that I didn't miss anything. When you're sleep deprived, you got to be a little bit more careful. If you remember the movie Apollo 13, when the one guy that loves country and western music is supposed to, not push the button too soon to separate the lunar module from the whatever it was, and he puts tape over it with a note saying "Don't touch" or something like that, because he's real tired too. So I don't have anything nearly that serious here. I just might do the same stitch twice or repeat something twice, which is good for learning. So here we go. I'm doing really good about ending with that needle up for the most part. That's pretty doggone cool. Yeah, I'm actually liking the blue stitch better than some of the other stitches. We might stay with the blue one for the last stitch that we do, I think. We might just do that. And by the way, I should mention as well, I appreciate those of you that saw my post sharing that news piece that was done on WK's museum down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I asked you all to please consider sharing it, because the original piece that was released by the news source in Tulsa, it's something like Discover Tulsa or Discover Oklahoma, maybe is what their thing is. And it had only gotten like 6 likes. And they have like a subscribership like we do on this channel. And we have about as many subscribers as they do as a news media source, which kind of surprised me. But also it surprised me that there hadn't been much in the way of activity in relation to that release, which I thought, a lot of people would have found interesting. They only had a couple hundred views. And sometimes when I release a premiere, we get a couple hundred views within a couple of hours after it's released. And this has been out, their piece down there in Oklahoma has been out for 8 months. So hopefully our little effort to share with people about this great museum that WK founded will somehow help them in some way. I hope it does. I hope it does. All right, let's pick another blue one, because I'm liking the blue ones. They're kind of cool. All right, so let's do this next blue one right next to the building block one. And this is what it's kind of looking like and what we're going to try to do. Okay, so we're going to be moving Control A from just one click over to 2. And then we're going to be leaving Control B exactly where it is. Control D, we have to make sure, which is our center stitch width, we have to make sure it's on 0, and it already is. Control C, we're not going to touch it all because it's going to be floating as it does this final stitch. All right, so our final stitch with Sonny Jim's PFAFF 332, doing another decorative stitch, one of many that is on this stitch card. And this is my stitch card again. Sonny already got hers from some other source. I don't know where she got it because they didn't send it with this machine like they were supposed to. All right, here we go. Another one of those loud clickers. Oh, I failed on the last one. It's in the down position. That's okay, I can fix that. All right, and finally, after all of that, we get to look at these, or you get to look at them. I can see them very clearly from the workbench right here, but you haven't had that privilege, so we're going to give you that privilege so you can see that. And also, with the promise of not knocking Herr Obermeister off again, I'm going to set him right up there, because I'm sure he'd like to see these as well. Yeah, those are pretty doggone cool. I like that. And I'm glad I hung onto this painter's tape, because I'm going to be able to use that right now after I got done just tearing it. Let's see here. Hold on a second. And I'm just deciding how I want to line these up. I think I want to line them up like that. Just clip that little thread on top there. Yeah, we'll look at them like this, because this is kind of the order. This is the order that we just did them in. I'll put them in the same area as we did the last one, see if that works. Yeah, that should work okay, I think. All right, so I'm going to move the camera so you can look at all these stitch offs we just did. We ended up doing, what is it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, I believe. We did 9 stitch offs, along with all the other stitch offs that we just did. So if that isn't confidence in this machine being ready to go to work. I don't know what is confidence. I have no idea. So let's see if we can zoom in on these. I just wish it were angled a little bit more. Here's what I can do. Let me just, actually let me come off the tripod for this final little piece, if that's okay with everybody. Come off the tripod and we'll get closer to these. I'll just have a little bit of a pickle when it comes to taking the material down and looking at the lock stitch. Okay, so we're going to look at all these together. I think we can pretty much pull that off. So we started with our first stitch all the way on this end. This is the last one we did way over here on the right. So I'm going to kind of go in there and you can kind of look at them again as far as the variety. And again, I'm sewing this on a cotton blend. If you choose a different type of material, they're going to present differently. If you use a different stitch length, they're going to present differently. Or a different needle to some extent as well. But I think those are just fabulous, don't you? All right, now I'm going to have to set down the camera for just a moment. I'll set it over here by Herr Obermeister. I hope I don't knock my camera off. That wouldn't be good. Here. I'm going to put Herr Obermeister's hand on there to hold it in place. Jeez. All right, I'm turning it around now so we can look at the lock stitch. Oh, that's a hoot. Sorry about that, Herr Obermeister. I knocked you off the workbench and now I'm using you as a prop to hold up the camera so it doesn't fall off. So this is our lock stitch now. So really if you reverse it, we started with this stitch over here on the far right side and we ended with this one, so you can kind of look at those as well. I think those are fabulous. I don't know about you, but I think those are fabulous. And that's only a small little sampling. Again, it's a small little sampling of what Sunny Jim's 332 is able to generate. I'm just going down one more time because I saw the light was kind of shining against the lens a little bit. It was kind of making it hard to see. So along with these decorative stitch offs, again, we did about 9 of those. Just to remind you again, reaching back over the back of the machine, we started with these 2 layers of genuine elk hide, and this 332 did just a fabulous job. We also did 8 layers of U.S. Army grade canvas, and apart from me not having enough presser foot pressure to manage that so we would get a more even stitch and a longer stitch like it should have been, it laid down just beautiful stitching in spite of me not increasing that presser foot pressure. Then we did 6 layers of heavy grade denim, and again this 332 went through that just like a hiccup, no difficulty whatsoever. Then we did this about 3 ounces of this leather suede stuff, which is a real tricky material again. I'm going to hold it right there because I'm not succeeding very well. Hold it right there, and you can see those stitches again were just fabulous on this real tricky leather suede material. And then last but certainly not least, we went through these 2 layers of protected full grain leather with kind of a modified zigzag. See that from the side again. And between the top stitch and the lock stitch, Sunny Jim's 332 did just a fabulous job. So like I've done in other premieres, if you want It's kind of hard. Let me flip it all the way around. There we go. You want to see the sew-off sandwich that we did. There it is. Plus we did all of those on top of it. So I think this machine is good to go to start heading towards Pennsylvania real soon, along with this really super duper project break for Sunny Jim. And if she isn't able to eat chocolate, I'm sure that one of her family members or friends will offer to assist her with this dark sea salt caramel. And this is good because some of you might be saying, well, she just keep that huge chocolate bar all to herself. Well, these makers of this product, and it does come from Germany. Where is it? There it is right there. It's distributed through Batavia, Illinois, but made in Germany. You can see it right there. And they make these all individual little chocolate bars. So each one of the chocolate bars is like about that big. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about 6. There's about 6 little chocolate bars in there. So if you've got several people that love chocolate, you can divide it up among the troops and hopefully not get any fights or tussles over the chocolate, the German chocolate. So I appreciate your patience and your grace as far as me doing this premiere on very little sleep. And I know that I probably fumbled a couple times. I know that I probably repeated things more than I sometimes do. And it wasn't to insult your intelligence. It was to highlight my sleep deprivation. So I should probably take this down so you can see the machine in the end here. I'll just awkwardly put my painter's tape right there. This chocolate bar is kind of blocking that too, but that's a good distraction, isn't it? I'll put it like this. So this is Sunny Jim's 332. I want to thank you, Sunny, for the opportunity of having this in the workshop and really being able to take it to the next level and get it ready for you to enjoy it out there in Pennsylvania. And for you having the foresight and the wisdom to say to the people you bought it from over there in Kalamazoo, Michigan, through Goodwill Online, don't send it to me. Send it to Scott. Let him go over it first. Because I did find a lot of things out of whack on this machine, and it was good to get them doing what they were supposed to be doing and operating the way it's supposed to be operated so that that wouldn't be a headache to Sunny Jim. Because from my little bit of contact with this lady, she is a peach. And I know that she'll be delighted to get this machine finally and just be able to have fun with it. So God bless all you guys. And remember my recent quote that I shared, because I think it's relevant to share again. And again, I believe it's from Kung Fu Panda. Not that I usually quote animated movies, but it seems appropriate just in the times that we're living. And with all of the political rhetoric and just all the tensions that are out there right now, where friends can become enemies and neighbors can feel hostility towards each other because one has this yard sign, another has this yard sign, and that's just, in the grand scheme of things, that's just pure silliness. We should have more of a mentality of being in a playroom. You know what? Like little kids, they play with kids of all colors, creeds, and political affiliations in their families, and they just don't care. They just want to have fun. They want to learn. And that's what we're supposed to be doing here in this classroom. So this quote is good, I think. Yesterday is history, tomorrow a mystery, but today is a gift, which is why we call it the present. So embrace that. I hope you're making the most of the gifts that you're given, which is every day you're alive. And I'm certainly thankful for every opportunity I have to come down to the workshop and to make a difference for all of you and to make a difference for Vintage Sewing Machines. So y'all take care and stay tuned for more premieres like this, where I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something new. I hope you have a little bit of fun. I hope when I'm silly, you chuckle a little bit, and that you'll also consider, if you haven't done it already, you thought about it, but you just kind of lost contact with it, kind of like I did on a number of things during this premiere, that you'll package up your machine, and give me an opportunity to show you what a machine looks like when it's optimized, how it sews, how it feels, how it delivers, and just how delighted you can be with an old machine you've had for a long time that after I've gotten done with it, you can rediscover it, get reinvigorated, and just have a lot of fun. Take care. Bye.